Inside the clinic, as you will see in the next video, Mr. Speaker, this Filipino person, our kababayan, who was visibly terrified, please show the next video, and completely compliant, ito na po, received repeated slapping from Director Casio. Surrounded by Director Casio's men and unable to defend himself or even voice any protest, the Filipino worker stood there helplessly, even appeared to be breaking down in tears, yet Director Casio continued to slap and berate him, as if acting out of personal vendetta. Director Casio's actions are profoundly unsettling and exposes an unchecked aggression among those trusted with authority, a behavior that has no place.
Albert S. Garcia, you have the floor, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Sa ating mga kasama dito ngayon sa plenaryo, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I rise today to speak on an issue that deeply concerns the welfare of the people I represent and the dignity of our labor force and investors in Bataan. Recent events involving Central One Bataan PH Inc. or Central One, a duly area of the Freeport area of Bataan registered locator doing business as a BPO company for IT, technical support to online gaming companies located outside the country, have exposed serious lapses and, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, an alarming disregard for due process by our law enforcement agencies. In the name of justice, we cannot allow any institution to act with a heavy hand and bring distress upon our law-abiding citizens without a thorough and cautious approach. Last October 31, 2024, employees of Central One found themselves in the midst of a raid that quickly turned into a nightmare. A combined team from the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission, PAOCC, and the Criminal Investigation Detection Group, CIDG, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and PNP Region 3 served a search warrant issued by a court in Malolos, Bulacan, on allegations of human trafficking. The warrant allowed for the confiscation of all items connected to the alleged crime, and the operation began around 3 p.m. What unfolded next was an ordeal that defies the principles of humane treatment and due process. As the implementing team began their search, all employees, both Filipino and foreign, were forcibly detained and held in various areas and denied their freedom to move or even use their cell phones, despite the fact that no evidence was gathered during the search on the alleged human trafficking. They were ordered to keep their hands above their heads. Most of them were even ordered to lie face down on their stomach. For the Filipino workers, initial threats of detention were made, although they were eventually released, but only after an exhaustive hours of profiling and harassment. The raiding team falsely claimed to be rescuing the employees, which contradicts the employees' clear statement that they need no rescuing at all. Now, with the video evidence, it is clear that the employees were seeking to be rescued from the PAOCC itself because of the latter's abusive conduct. For the foreign workers, the ordeal was even more harrowing. They were labeled undesirable aliens despite possessing necessary papers such as alien employment permits and investors' visa. Director Winston Casio, spokesperson of PAOCC, leading the operation, insisted on their detention, claiming that their work at Central One was illegal due to the fact that they are working in an establishment which has not secured secondary permit from PAGCOR, a claim that has no sufficient legal basis and unsupported by any specific criminal law. 42 foreign nationals were detained by the PAOCC despite the absence of grounds to detain them. If their case is for being undesirable aliens, then the arrest should have been carried out by the Bureau of Immigration, officer armed with a mission order. However, the search was conducted in absence of BI officers, making the illegality of the arrest more obvious. Throughout this traumatic ordeal, Central One's legal representative repeatedly explained that the company was legally operating as a BPO under a license from the Authority of the Freeport Area of Bataan, or AFAB, and did not require a secondary permit from PAGCOR, as there were no POGO operations involved. Nonetheless, the pleas of Central One's representatives fell on deaf ears as Director Casio and other officers of the raiding team simply maintained that they were just acting as on orders of the Executive Secretary. For every point raised by the legal representative of Central One, Director Casio would just end up saying that they were just acting on orders of the Executive Secretary. Mr. Speaker, sana hindi po niname drop ni Director Casio ang pangalan ni Executive Secretary dahil kilala ko po si Executive Secretary na isang mabait na tao. At bilang Justice, dating Justice ng Supreme Court at Chief Justice pa man din, alam niya ang karapatan ng mamamayan na dapat respetuhin ng otoridad. Sigurado kong hindi niya kukonsintihin ang mga pinagagawang pang-aabuso ng mga operatiba sa aming kababayan sa lalawigan ng Bataan. The raiding team also proceeded with the detention of the foreigners. The search was not only chaotic, but marred by reports of pilferage. The foreign national claimed millions of pesos were seized, and high-end phones, designer shoes, bags, and watches were missing. It was also claimed that more than 100 million pesos, which is supposed to be payment for the salaries of the workers, payment for contractors and suppliers, also went missing. What is truly disturbing are some videos that I have seen showing that during the search and arrest, Director Casio publicly humiliated a Filipino worker, stripping him of his dignity in front of many onlookers. Despite showing no sign of aggression, he was met with the officers' hostility, violently pulled and shoved into the clinic room, as you will see in this video, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Surrounded by Director Casio's men and unable to defend himself or even voice any protest, the Filipino worker stood there helplessly, even appeared to be breaking down in tears, yet Director Casio continued to slap and berate him, as if acting out of personal vendetta. Director Casio's actions are profoundly unsettling and exposes an unchecked aggression among those trusted with authority, a behavior that has no place in any just and civilized society. He is a bully, stamping on the weak while shamelessly wearing the uniform which demands him to behave otherwise. He does not deserve to be in that position nor in any position of power. He has now been relieved of his responsibilities as spokesperson of PAOCC, but I assure him and all other officers responsible for maltreating my constituent, they will face all available legal and criminal action. Mr. Speaker, I would like to direct you into another video where Director Casio, acting with disturbing arrogance, he is seen shouting at the detained employees, pronouncing with full dominance that he has the right to hold them and that no Filipino are allowed to go home. His behavior in this video resembles a tantrum which falls drastically short of the standard expected, especially from someone in his position. Ang sumisigaw po ay walang iba kundi si Director Casio. Sinisigawan po niya yung aming mga kababayang nagtatrabaho lamang doon sa BPO at sinasabi niya, i-hold niya sila hanggang Lunes. And take note, October 31 po nangyari yung raid, so that was a Thursday, so 4 na araw niya pong i-hold yung aming kababayan nang wala man lang ebidensya. So yun ang kanyang pananakot na ginawa po sa aming lalawigan. And may I ask, why did PAOCC and the raiding team find it necessary to dismantle or remove all the CCTVs in Central 1 premises during the raid? Was this done to conceal the irregularities in the raid? Were they afraid that their actions would be recorded and exposed? PAOCC Director Casio has publicly stated in media interviews that they don't take money or gadgets during the raid, but there is a video that contradicts his claim, clearly showing that they dismantled and seized the CCTV in Central 1. Please show the next video. Yan po, inaakyat ng kanilang operatives yung CCTV at tinatanggal po. And please show the succeeding video kung saan nakatanggal na po at makikita nyo sa lapag yung dami ng CCTV na nilalapag ng kanilang operatives.
Uy, lalo dun sa kabila.
Dose ng CCTV po yung kanilang ibinaba. Disabling or removing CCTVs during the raid is clearly a violation of the principles of transparency and accountability. It clearly prevents the full and complete documentation of the operation and undermines public trust in law enforcement. Mr. Speaker, the incident indeed has a chilling effect on the workers and companies alike, casting a shadow over the very purpose of economic zones designed to foster growth and opportunity. As a nation that upholds the principles of due process and humane treatment, we must demand accountability for those who abuse their power and tarnish the image of our law enforcement agencies. This incident calls for an immediate reforms and oversight to ensure that such acts of brutality are not repeated and that every Filipino worker is treated with respect that they deserve. Enforcement is not a license to mistreat or humiliate. And due process is not a mere technicality. It is a fundamental right enshrined in our Constitution. Search warrants must be executed with strict adherence in the law and with full respect to those affected. Every individual deserves clarity and humane treatment during this operation. Authorities owe it to the community and to the individuals they impact, and owe it to be transparent and accountable. Vague responses and heavy-handed tactics are not sufficient. We demand a full and honest accounting from those entrusted with the enforcement of the law. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, the search warrant was issued by the court for alleged violation of RA 9208 or the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003 as amended. However, this seems to have been used beyond its intent purpose. Director Casio, in his several public statements, maintains that the arrests were made due to the supposed POGO-related activities with no mention of human trafficking. As outlined in the warrant, what happened to the human trafficking allegation as embodied in the warrant? Lacking any evidence of human trafficking, the raiding team shifted their focus to allegations of POGO-related activities. That appears to be not covered by the search warrant. This ought to be investigated by the concerned authorities to ensure that law enforcement respect judicial mandates and maintain accountability. Mr. Speaker, the FAB, or the Freeport area of Bataan, has a long and storied history. Not too long ago, it was in a state of decline, facing the grim prospect of becoming a ghost town. But through the dedication and vision and resilience of Bataan's leaders and the support of its people, FAB was revived. Today, it stands as one of the top-performing free ports in the Philippines. A beacon of opportunity not only for the people of Bataan, but for the nation. It is a hub for foreign direct investment and a source of employment for thousands. This transformation from decline to prosperity shows the tireless efforts of our community and the critical role of AFAB as an engine for local and national development. I stand fully with President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s vision of empowering our ecozones, the front line of economic growth that drive the nation forward. This vision resonates with that of his late father, President Ferdinand E. Marcos Sr., who laid the groundwork for establishing the Bataan Export Processing Zone, or EPSA, which is now the Freeport area of Bataan, or FAB. Our shared commitment to supporting ecozones makes this incident especially disheartening, as it undermines the vital role that ecozones like the FAB play in our national progress. With 190 billion pesos in investment from 2010 to 2023, the FAB has become a powerful engine of economic opportunity. From 2010 to 2023, the FAB investments stood at more than 190 billion. In 2022 alone, the Freeport achieved a benefit cost ratio of 10.31, creating livelihoods, contributing billions to our national treasury, and drawing international investors. Employment also increased to 40,895 in 2023 from just around 12,000 in 2010. Decades ago, Bataan has been known to be the province where communist rebels and militant labor groups thrive. Our massive economic development and low poverty incidence have changed this narrative. Through our provincial leaders' painstaking effort, Bataan has become a worthy investment destination. Unfortunately, a single harrowing event like what recently transpired can negate all that has been achieved. I think now you will agree that the revival story of the FAB, from near abandonment to a thriving economic zone, must not be jeopardized by careless enforcement actions that alienate investors and disrupt our workers. The leaders of the government agencies involved have to agree that this initiative could have been better executed through a coordinated effort, if ever one was even warranted at all. Mr. Speaker, I also stand with our President in his call to end illegal Philippine offshore gaming operations and to eliminate any IGLs involved in criminal activities. But in our pursuit of justice, we must uphold the principles of prudence and fairness in carrying out search warrants. Law enforcement must be diligent with full caution in investigation to avoid unjust disruption to businesses. These businesses sustain the livelihood of thousands and provide substantial investment in our economy. Mr. Speaker, I call upon our law enforcement agencies to act with greater care and diligence. When they enter economic zones like the Freeport area of Bataan, they must proceed with a sense of responsibility that reflects the vital importance of these zones. We are a nation of laws, and every arm of the government must respect and follow these laws. Arbitrary action without accountability betray the public trust and threaten our economy and people. I demand accountability from those responsible for violating the fundamental rights of the officers and employees of Central One. I call on PAOCC Executive Director Gilbert Cruz, Central Luzon Regional Police Office Chief Brigadier General Redrico Maranan, and CIDG Director Brigadier General Nicolas Torre III, who were reportedly present during the raid. As heads of their offices, they have the responsibility to uphold and respect the rights of our people who they are bound to protect. They are mandated to see to it that their teams conduct searches and arrests lawfully and appropriately, especially within special economic zones. By allowing this botched operation to unfold, they failed their solemn duty and thus caused the erosion of public trust in them. Hindi ba sila naaawa sa ating mga kababayang Pilipino na pinayagan nilang maltratuhin, gutumin, puyatin, at isailalim sa di makatarungang kondisyon? Mga kababayan natin sila, mga Pilipino ang nais lamang ay magtrabaho para sa kanilang pamilya. At ngayon, dahil sa sinasabing nawawalang higit 100 milyong pisong pondo para sa kanilang sweldo, paano na sila at ang kanilang pamilya? Dapat sana'y ipakita ng mga opisyalis na ito ang mas mataas na malasakit sa mga Pilipinong manggagawa. Dahil tayo ay tinaguriang mga lingkod bayan, narito upang magsilbi sa taong bayan, hindi upang usigin, maltratuhin ang kapwa natin. Hindi nyo lang kinuha ang kanilang sweldo. Kung mawawalan sila ng trabaho dahil sa pagdurusang sinapit ng mga investors, pinagkait nyo na rin ang kanilang magandang kinabukasan. In closing, Mr. Speaker, this incident has dealt a blow to Bataan's reputation as a secure and investment-friendly province which could deter future investors, a possibility we hope to avoid. We have worked tirelessly to establish Bataan as an economically vibrant and peaceful province, yet this failed operation risks tarnishing that hard-earned reputation. Even more concerning, it threatens the livelihood of more than 1,600 local workers of Central One. As we strive to grow our economy and attract investments, we must remain committed to due process and to showing respect to every Filipino worker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I urge this body to immediately heed this call for justice, accountability, and dignity for all. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
With 192 members responding to the call, the chair declares the presence of quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the deferment of the journal of the previous session.
There's a motion to defer the journal or the reading of the journal of the previous session. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the reference of business in request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions of the first reading as well as communication and committee reports.
Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The Secretary General is directed to read the titles of the bills, resolutions on first reading as well as communications and committee reports for referral for the appropriate committees. Secretary General.
Reference of business. Bills on first reading. House Bill 11029, naming a portion of the Santander Barili-Toledo National Road as the Pablo P. Garcia Highway by Representative Calderon.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 11030, mandating the construction until completion of Maasin Airport in Maasin City, Southern Leyte by Representative Mercado.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 11031, converting the Salvacion Opus Inigas Memorial Provincial Hospital as the Southern Leyte Medical Center under the DOH by Representative Mercado.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 11033, creating a National Science High School campus in Maasin City, Southern Leyte by Representative Mercado.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 11036, promoting digital inclusion through universal internet access, digital literacy programs, and infrastructure development by Representative Garcia Pablo John.
To the Committee on Information and Communications Technology.
House Bill 11040, penalizing foreign interference in the Philippines and creating the Counter-Foreign Interference Task Force by Representatives Malapitan, Romulo, Tupas, and Gutierrez.
To the Committee on Justice.
House Bill 11043, an act providing for a civil forfeiture in favor of the state any unlawfully acquired real estate properties by any foreign national by Representatives Gonzales Aurelio, Suarez, Barbers, Abante, Fernandez, Paduano, Acop, Pimentel, Luistro, Gutierrez, Ortega, Conghun, Flores, and Jonicio.
To the Committee on Justice.
Resolutions. House Resolution 2064, congratulating and commending the Philippine Modern Pentathlon Association and Ormocanon athletes for winning in the UIPM 2024 Asian Laser Run Championships in Leyte, Ormoc City on October 26 to 28, 2024 by Representative Gomez.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Resolution 2065, directing the Committee on Tourism to investigate the demolition of the Rizal Park Relief MOC by the National Museum of the Philippines by Representative Olaso.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Concurrent Resolution 38, concurrent resolution authorizing the correction of Section 1 in the enrolled copy of House Bill Number 8259 by Representative Dalipe.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications. Letter dated October 18, 2024 of the Bank Officer 6 BSP, Office of the General Counsel and Legal Services, transmitting to the House of Representatives a duly certified copy of Memorandum Number M2024-032, dated 10 October 2024.
To the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
Various communications submitted to the House by officials of several local government units relative to their posting and reporting requirements of the fund utilization and status of program project implementation of the Local Government Support Fund, as attested by the respective local chief executives.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Committee reports. Committee report numbers 1245 and 1246 submitted by the Committees on Basic Education and Culture and Appropriations and House Bill numbers 11037 and 11038 respectively. Committee report number 1247 submitted by the Committees on Justice and Appropriations on House Bill 11039. Committee report number 1248, submitted by the Committee on Higher and Technical Education on House Bill 11041. Committee report number 1249, submitted by the Committee on Legislative Franchises on House Bill 11042. Committee report number 1250, submitted by the Committee on Games and Amusements on House Bill 11044.
The aforementioned committee reports are all referred to the Committee on Rules. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we would like to recognize the guests of Honorable Keith Micah, Attorney Mike D.L. Tan, the Public Employment Service Office, and Barangay Employment Service Coordinators of the Local Government Unit of Atimonan, Quezon.
They're the guests of Congressperson Micah Tan. To the guests of Congressperson Micah Tan, welcome to the House of Representatives. Good afternoon. Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, today being a Monday and pursuant to our rules, I move that we open the privilege hour.
Motion to open the privilege hour. Any objection? Hearing none. Let's proceed.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
to avail of the privilege hour, I move that we recognize the Honorable Albert Garcia of the 2nd District of Bataan for his privilege speech.
Congressperson of the 2nd District of Bataan. From the Chair, maraming salamat, Representative Garcia. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Raul Manuel of the Kabataan Party List for his interpellation.
Kabataan Party List, Raul Manuel, you're recognized. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would our colleague yield to a few questions regarding the topic of his privilege speech?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Speaker, Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Una sa lahat, Mr. Speaker, gusto muna nating kumustahin ang mga manggagawang Pilipino doon sa Central 1. After the incident, after this raid na nakita natin, ay merong mga ilang abuso na nangyari. Sa ngayon, Mr. Speaker, kumusta na sila? Kasi sila yung mga gusto natin hindi naapakan yung kanilang welfare tsaka maging yung kanilang legitimate na sources ng kabuhayan. So how are they, Mr. Speaker?
From our coordination with the company, Mr. Speaker, yung mga workers po ay very traumatized from what happened. They are trying to regroup. Tinutulungan sila ng kumpanya para makakope sa pangyayari. Ginagather din po nila yung mga testimonya ng maraming empleyado sa mga pang-abusong ginawa ng mga otoridad. At handa po silang lumaban sa nangyaring ito, Mr. Speaker, dahil naniniwala sila, wala po silang ginagawang mali dito sa kaganapan, kaya matapang po sila at lumalaban. Ang isang inaalala lang nila, Mr. Speaker, number 1, yung sweldo nila na tinangay. Kasama po dyan yung Christmas bonus. So that is the immediate concern aside from coping up with the trauma of what happened. And second po, Mr. Speaker, paano na lang yung trabaho nila? Magpapatuloy pa ba? They are happy in that ecosystem. Dito po, para sa kaalaman ng lahat, libre hatid at sundo yung mga empleyado coming from far-flung places in our province. Libre yung pagkain. Buffet po. Ang ganda ng gym at incentive-based yung kanilang sweldo. Kaya sobrang saya po nila doon at ito po'y mukhang mawawala dahil po sa nangyaring trahedya na ito, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, kung ganun pala ang sitwasyon doon, lalo na papasok tayo sa December, ibig sabihin magpapasko, ganun pala yung kalagayan ng mga manggagawang Pilipino doon. Mr. Speaker, kung usapin lang naman halimbawa ng human trafficking, ayaw naman natin na merong magiging biktima noon. Kaya naman kung may mga operations, dapat nasisiyasat bago mag-conduct ng mga ganong operasyon. Tapos hindi naaagrabyado yung mga kababayan natin na lehitimo yung kanilang mga pinagkakakitaan. So Mr. Speaker, kasi kung yung goal ay human trafficking prevention as stated doon sa search warrant na siyang batayan ng ginawang operasyon, Mr. Speaker, ano ba yung mga aksyon ng law enforcement na tingin natin ay nakaapak na doon sa condition ng ating mga workers doon sa Central 1?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, tama ho kayo. Yung search warrant was for human trafficking. At pinagyayabang po ng mga otoridad, more than 1 month yung surveillance na ginawa nila doon sa facility. So, sinasabi nila airtight yung kanilang kaso dito. And yet, nung pinasok nila, nakita nila winelcome po sila ng maayos na walang mali siya. Yung mga officers and workers na nag-welcome sa kanila, nung wala silang nakitang human trafficking, bigla sila nag-switch sa pogo, illegal gambling, and so on and so forth. Which is a clear violation, Mr. Speaker, ng search warrant na in-issue nung judge para dito. Nagulat sila na walang torture chamber. Walang mga sex den na nakita at maayos na maayos yung pagpapatakbo ng BPO. And I guess, to cover for their lapses, bigla sila nag-switch sa pogo na hindi naman nila napapatunayan, Mr. Speaker.
Kung ganun, Mr. Speaker, lalo na sa mga recent din na investigasyon sa Kamara at maging sa Senado ay lumitaw ang mga nangyayaring hindi magaganda sa mga pogo, Mr. Speaker. So, tingin ba natin, Mr. Speaker, itong anti-pogo drive at yung mga initiatives natin para mapigilan ang pag-proliferate at maging yung patuloy na operations ng mga pogo, tingin ba natin ito ay naabuso doon sa ginawang raid sa Central 1, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I was telling the authorities after the raid na what if ito yung other side of the coin, na merong maayos na nagpapatakbo ng BPO, but because of the tsunami of drive against Pogo, hindi natin nakita at nahusgahan natin ng basta-basta na lamang itong maayos na BPO na nag-eempleyo ng libo-libo ng ating mga kababayan. So, I think nakuryente po dito yung ating mga otoridad na meron pala yung other side of the coin na maayos na nagpapatakbo na nag-eempleyo ng libo-libo nating mga kababayan na BPO operation. So, dapat dito po mag-ingat yung ating mga otoridad na give them the benefit of the doubt, iserve ng maayos at kunin ng maayos yung search warrant, galingan yung surveillance, nang sa ganon hindi natin nabubulabog yung ating mga investors na nagbibigay ng napakaraming trabaho para sa ating mga kababayan.
Now, Mr. Speaker, I do want to focus dun sa nangyaring mga abuses. Sa mga otoridad, Mr. Speaker, sino-sino po ba ito? PAOCC lang po ba? Or meron din bang police? Or those law enforcement personnel from other agencies? Sino po yung mga kalahok dito, Mr. Speaker?
As far as I know, Mr. Speaker, ang nanguna po dyan ay yung PAOCC, CIDG, PNP Region 3, at elements of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. As far as I know, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, others may argue na itong ginawa ng law enforcement ay pagsunod lamang sa utos ng nakakataas. So, it can be used to justify na hindi sila panagutin. Ano po ang komento doon ng ating colleague, Mr. Speaker?
Sa aking pagkaintindi sa batas, although hindi po ako abogado, bagamat may mga instructions, kailangan i-implement po nila or i-execute po nila ng maayos. With respect to human rights, that is uncompromisable, respect sa due process at dignity ng bawat isa, whether foreign or local. Ayan po ay clearly hindi na implement ng maayos in this case sa aming probinsya ng Bataan.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, doon din sa reported abuses ng PAOCC, kagaya ng pananampal, paninigaw, ang nabanggit po kasi lalo noong spokesperson or director, si Ginoong Casio, na-provoke daw po sila. Kaya kinailangan nilang gawin yon para ma-maintain nila yung control doon sa raid. So sa pagtingin po ng ating kapwa mambabatas, tama po bang may ganun ngang nangyari at necessary ba na ganun yung gawin ng PAOCC sa ganung pagkakataon?
If you watch closely the video, Mr. Speaker, makikita nyo na nagmamakaawa yung tao. Sinasabi niya, tignan nyo yung mga camera and wala siyang ginawang pagprovoke sa mga authorities. And sa pagtatanggal ng mga otoridad, ng mga CCTV, paano sila makaka-argue doon sa sinasabi ng mga tao? Dahil protection po nila ng ating mga authorities yung camera as much as protection din ng mga mamamayan. Pero dahil sa kanilang pagtanggal ng mga camera, suspect na po yung lahat ng kanilang ginawa, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Hearing that, Mr. Speaker, moving forward, dahil na-establish po natin na meron talagang excesses na ginawa ang law enforcement agency sa ginawang raid sa Central 1. Mr. Speaker, ano po ang mga hakbang ngayon na ginagawa para ma-address yung naging mga abuses? Ano po ang whether legal action or other types of action para mapigilan po na maulit ang ganitong mga tipo ng insidente?
First of all, I think the company together with its employees ay nagagather na po ng mga affidavit and they will file administrative and criminal cases sa pang-abusong ginawa. Especially dun po sa kababayan naming sinampal. That's one. Two, I hope by this speech dito po sa ating August Chamber, ma-refer po ito sa appropriate committee para ma-check yung pang-aabusong ginawa ng ating mga otoridad. At the same time, paano pa nating ma-improve yung ating mga polisiya na kung saan iniimbita natin yung mga investor, dapat maprotektahan natin sila. So sa ating mga free ports, economic zones, and other areas, para lumaganap lalo yung trabaho at magandang buhay dito po sa ating bansa. Kung ganito po yung mangyayari, talagang lalayuan po tayo ng foreign investors. Pag nilayuan po tayo ng foreign investors, paano na lang po yung trabaho at magandang kinabukasan ng ating mga kababayan?
Panghuling tanong natin, Mr. Speaker, ano po ang may recommend natin as an alternative kung may mga cases na yung law enforcement agencies natin ay nagsususpetsya na yung isang legitimate BPO ay meron di umano nangyayaring human trafficking doon. In those instances, Mr. Speaker, ano mo ba talaga yung dapat na gawin? No? Unlike dun sa nangyari sa Central 1.
Gusto kong malaman ninyo, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Manuel, na this representation, together with the government of Bataan, we will not tolerate any illegal activities in our province. Kung meron man nangyayari, we're with you and with the President na talagang huliin yung mga illegal na nangyayari because we don't live in a perfect world. Pero itong mga ganitong raid, ilang beses na pong nangyari sa Freeport area of Bataan. Kaya yung tanong ko nga po sa mga otoridad, with all the resources ng intelligence, ng surveillance, can we do this surgically rather than itong napakalawak na pambubulabog, scandalous raid na nakakasira ng reputasyon? So, maaring hindi perfect, maaring may mga bad eggs, bad element, but with all the resources of government, baka pwedeng mas maayos, mas surgical yung ating approach. So, without all the illegal elements, if there's any, nang hindi natin binubulabog, katulad ngayon, nawalan tayo ng libo-libong trabaho sa ating bansa. So if there's a way that we can reform our policies to do that, that will be a big help for our country to attract more investment, protect investors, and secure jobs for our people.
Huli na lang pala, Mr. Speaker, given nga na naapektuhan dito ay mga kapwa Pilipino natin na nais lamang na magkaroon ng trabaho. May we know, Mr. Speaker, if our colleague has data doon sa ilan ba yung mga Filipino workers na ngayon ay nangangamba na walang kikitain, walang sahod?
Nung Mr. Speaker, nung Thursday, at ni-raid po yung Central 1. Ang press release ho, lahat ng operating teams na nag-raid ay ni-rescue nila ang 600 Filipino workers and 300 foreign nationals from human trafficking. Yung nakita nilang wala yon, yun po yung press release. If you recall, that evening ng Thursday, sunod-sunod po yan, iba-ibang media outfits. 600 Filipino workers, 300 foreign nationals ang ni-rescue nila. Yung nakita nilang wala naman palang human trafficking, nag-switch sila sa narrative na illegal pogo raw. Ang totoong numero po, to set the record straight, ang nawalan po ng trabaho is 1,600 Filipinos at yung kinilang denetain na 42 foreign nationals. 42 lamang po. Mostly Malaysians, Brazilians, Taiwanese nationals, Mr. Speaker. Pero ang nakakalungkot dyan, yung walang trabaho at walang sweldo ngayon na 1,600 na aming mga kababayan.
Okay. With those responses, Mr. Speaker, we hope that our appropriate agencies sa executive branch ay makakilos sa lalong madaling panahon para mapanagot yung mga lumabag sa kanilang mandato at hindi na ito maulit pa sa mga kasunod na mga pagkakataon. And for whatever means that we can have dito sa Kamara, may it be an investigation, then we support that based on the speech and the responses by our colleague. Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Salamat sa ating kapwa mababatas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Manuel.
Maraming salamat, Kabataan Party List, Congressperson Raul Manuel. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Maria Angela Garcia of the 3rd District of Bataan for her manifestation.
Please proceed, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a manifestation regarding the privileged speech of Congressman Albert Garcia. Nais ko po sanang makapagbigay ng karagdagang pananaw at ibang perspektibo ukol dito sa insidente. Magpasa hanggang ngayon, marami sa ating mga kababayan ang napipilitang makipagsapalaran sa ibang bansa, maging OFW or overseas Filipino worker, to uplift their financial condition and provide a better future for their families. Bagamat ang kapalit nito ay pagsabak sa mahirap na trabaho, sakripisyo, lungkot, at stress na dulot ng pagkawalay sa mga mahal nila sa buhay. Ito ang naging buhay ng empleyado ng Central 1 PH na sinampal ni PAOCC spokesperson. Siya po ay nag-OFW ng 14 na taon, simula pa po noong taong 2006. Noong makapasok siya sa Central 1, laking pasasalamat po niya na hindi na niya kailangang mag-ibang bansa at mananatili pa siyang kapiling ang kanyang pamilya. Lalo na nang siya ay naging regular at naging maganda ang sahod at mga benepisyo. Kaya lubos na nakakadismaya ang mga naiulat na hindi makatarungang pagtrato ng ilang opisyales at miyembro ng raiding team mula sa PAOCC, PNP3, CIDG at AFP sa ating mga kapwa mamamayang Pilipino na mga empleyado ng Central 1 PH sa Bagak, Bataan. Bagamat wala pa mang naipapakitang malinaw na ebidensya ng human trafficking, may mga ulat na ang mga Pilipinong manggagawa ay tinutukan, pinagbantaan, at isinailalim sa walang dahilang detensyon ng ilang oras. Si PAOCC Director Winston Casio ay nakita sa CCTV na ilang beses na sinampal ang nabanggit na empleyado. Nagpapakita po ito ng labis na pang-aabuso sa kapangyarihan at kawalang respeto sa dignidad ng kanyang kapwa-tao. Ang kawalan ng tamang pamamaraan at kakulangan ng tamang pamamalakad sa ganitong operasyon ay nagdudulot ng matinding panganib sa kabuhayan at ng mahigit na 1,600 nating kababayang empleyado ng Central 1 na ngayon ay nag-aalala na mawalan ng trabaho. Ang ganitong pag-abuso at kapabayaan ay hindi katanggap-tanggap at isang seryosong banta sa seguridad at dignidad ng ating mga manggagawa. Bukod dito, ang integridad ng enforcement ng search warrant sa insidenteng ito ay highly questionable. Unang-una, bakit sila hindi nakipag-coordinate sa AFAB tulad ng malinaw na nakasaad sa batas? Either hindi kaya nila alam ito, or worse, hindi na nila ito isinaalang-alang. At bakit po tinanggal ang mga CCTV? Meron ba silang mga ginawa na dapat walang makakita? Tulad ng pananampal sa empleyado? Nasaan ang transparency? Mr. Speaker, public statements by the raiding team alleged a range of crimes, including human trafficking, illegal pogo operations, illegal sports betting. But those allegations remain unsubstantiated as no formal charges have been filed as of this time. Mr. Speaker, batay sa record, ang Central 1 PH ay rehistrado sa Freeport area of Bataan. Para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, ang Freeport area of Bataan at ang Authority of the Freeport area of Bataan ay naitatag sa pamamagitan ng Republic Act 9728 at amended by Republic Act 11453. Ang vision ng FAB is to be a development catalyst by creating meaningful employment and inclusive economic growth in Central Luzon through pioneering corporate governance and multi-sectoral collaboration. Its mission is to create safe, secure, as well as orderly Freeport areas that thrive in livable, ecologically balanced, and disaster-resilient environments, sustained by reliable, efficient, and technologically relevant infrastructure systems. Mr. Speaker, As of end December 2023, the Authority of the Freeport Area of Bataan o AFAB has reported the following key figures. Total value of investments from 2011 to 2023, 650.56 billion pesos. Total employment, 36,857 as of September 2024. Pero nung pre-pandemic, umabot ng 45,000 workers as of end December 2023. Total taxes remitted to the national government, 1.98 billion pesos. These figures reflect AFAB's significant role in promoting economic growth and employment in our country. Mr. Speaker, let it be put on record that the province of Bataan and its local government officials do not and will never condone nor tolerate criminal activities within its jurisdiction. However, we cannot also allow a highly questionable operation such as this incident to be not investigated or to be repeated, as it has impacted the thousands of jobs of our constituents, the investment climate, and the image of our province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Congressman Abet, and our dear colleagues.
Maraming salamat, First District Congresswoman Garcia. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Erwin Tulfo of the ACCI Party List for his interpellation.
Interpellation.
Yes.
Interpellations. Okay. ACT Party List, Congressperson Erwin.
Thank you,
Tulfo,
Mr.
please proceed,
Speaker.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sa aking kasama si Congressman Abet Garcia, hindi naman ho kayo kontra na ang mga otoridad natin ay gawin ang kanilang trabaho tulad po na pinag-uutos ng Pangulo na silipin ng PAGCOR ang mga illegal na mga pogo. Pero kontra po kayo sa pamamaraan ng pag-execute o yung kanilang ginawa doon sa Central 1. Tama po ba?
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Tulfo, tama po yun. Tayo po ay isang bansa ng maraming batas, country of laws, and tayo po ay dapat sumunod sa ating mga batas. At wala po kaming problema dahil kung ma-implement lamang po ng tama yung search warrant at yung conduct nung kanilang raid na ginawa, ay wala po sana magiging problema sa amin. Kaso nakita nyo po, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Tulfo, yung nangyari na ang dami pong pang-aabuso na ginawa. And katulad po nung sinabi ko kanina, yung mere fact na pagtanggal na lang nila ng CCTV ay will invite suspicion on what happened next. Dahil mawawalan po ng proteksyon ang ating kababayan, mawawalan din po ng proteksyon yung ating mga otoridad. So, suspect na po kagad yung mga nangyari pagkatapos nun, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, kung ang aking pong kasamahan sa Kongreso will agree with me, hindi po suspicion yon, kundi lakad po talaga ng sindikato yung nangyari po doon sa Bataan. Bakit kanyo, Mr. Speaker? Ang hinahanap nila ay trafficking, mga manggagawa na dapat ay hindi naroon. Subalit wala pong nakita dahil lahat po ng tao doon ay may kaukulang papeles, bigla pong kumambyo. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, mali from the very start ang ginawa po ng ahensya na yon, mali ang kanilang pag-execute ng warrant na yon, mali ang pagiging doon nila at that very moment kasi Mali at wala po yung kanilang hinahanap. Sana nag-apologize na lamang po sila, Mr. Speaker, at nagsabi na, we are wrong, we are pulling out. Tama po ba, Ginoong Congressman from Bataan, sir?
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Speaker. Yung sinabi kong suspicion, that was an understatement. I was being kind. Pero yung inyong mga sinabi ay tama po, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Tulfo.
Mr. Speaker, hindi naman po tayo pwede magbulag-bulagan at sasabihin ko lamang po, base po sa experience, dahil ako po'y dating mamahayag, halos araw-araw naaabuso ang mga kababayan natin, lalo na ang mga maliliit. Ang ginawa pong pananampal dun sa ordinaryong manggagawa ay labag po sa karapatan niya. Dapat po hindi pinapayagan ito. Tayo po na nasa Kongreso ay dapat magsagawa ng mga investigasyon kahalintulad po nito. And therefore, I would like to ask my colleague from Bataan to please file a resolution. I will support your resolution in aid of investigation to stop this kind of abuses and treatment to ordinary people by law enforcement agencies. Will you agree with me, Congressman Garcia?
Again, Mr. Speaker, ako po'y sang-ayon sa mga pinahayag ni Honorable Tulfo. And if necessary, aside from this privileged speech, if necessary for me to file a resolution to aid, to investigate this raid that happened in our province, I will, Mr. Speaker. But if the plenary will refer this privileged speech to the appropriate committee, we can start the inquiry there, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Tulfo.
Ako na mismo magsasabi, Mr. Speaker, na susuportahan ko yan, 10 ng aking mga kasamahan sa party list namin, at syempre ang iba pa mga mambabatas ho narito, hindi ho tayo makakapayag kasi paulit-ulit na ginagawa po ito at gagawin pa sa mga darating na panahon. Matagal na ho nating naririnig, Mr. Speaker, mga pang-aabuso ng mga government agencies, law enforcement officials, huli dito, huli doon, at pagkatapos kakargahan ng kung ano-ano o kakasuhan, ang pobreng tao ay walang magawa dahil hindi nga cannot afford to pay a lawyer, ay mananatili sa kulungan. Dapat po, Mr. Speaker, this has to stop now during this administration. Dapat po hindi na po natin makita pa itong mga ganitong kahalintulad na pang-aabuso ng mga otoridad because they are powerful, they can do anything. Dapat po hindi po ganon, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Congressman Garcia. Mr. Speaker, maraming salamat po. Yan lamang po.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, at maraming salamat sa inyong suporta, Honorable Tulfo.
Maraming salamat, Congressman Tulfo of CIS. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Albert Garcia, the manifestation of the Honorable Maria Angela Garcia, the interpellations of the Honorable Irwin Tulfo and the Honorable Raul Manuel to the Committee on Rules for each appropriate action. To move, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Majority Leader. Is there no objection? The chair hears none. The privileged speech of Representative Albert Garcia, together with the interpellation and the manifestation thereon, is referred to the Committee on Rules for appropriate action. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we also extend the privilege hour by another hour in order to accommodate the others who wish to give a privileged speech. And before we proceed, I move also that we recognize the guests of the Honorable Glona Labad-Labad, and these are Mayor Darrell Uy, and municipal and barangay officials from the municipality of Sindangan, Zamboanga del Norte.
As to the motion to extend, most fitting with the privilege hour, motion is thereby approved. I'd like to acknowledge This is from Glona Labad-Labad, representative of the 2nd District of Zamboanga del Norte. To your guests, on behalf of Speaker Martin Romualdez, yeah, they're all there. Maayong hapon kaninyong tanan. Welcome to the House of Representatives. Madam Glona Labad-Labad. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we likewise recognize the guests of the Honorable Ann Matibag. Her guests are Colonel Francel Padilla of AFP, Lieutenant Colonel Ferdinand Foronda, Major Mark Anthony Cardenosa, and Sergeant Catherine Sidro, all currently stationed at the AFP booth in the South Wing Annex, where people who wish to learn more about the West Philippine Sea can find literature.
Thank you, Majority Leader. To the guests of the 1st District of Laguna, the city of San Pedro, led by Colonel Francil Margarith Padilla, AFP spokesperson, on behalf of Speaker Martin Romualdez, welcome to the House of Representatives. Mayong hapon, magandang hapon. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now recognize the Honorable Erwin Tulfo of the ACT Party List for his privileged speech.
The gentleman from ACT Party List, ACT-CIS, Congressperson Erwin T. Tulfo. You're recognized, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you today to propose an amendment to the Philippine Rice Tariffication Law. While this law was designed to stabilize rice supply and prevent sharp price increases, we have seen a growing disparity between local demand and the prices that are affordable to ordinary Filipinos, despite the reduction of import tariff by the President last July. Mr. Speaker, the price of imported rice remained at 50 to 60 pesos per kilo in the market today. The purpose of Malacanang in reducing the tariff is to make rice affordable at 42 to 45 pesos per kilo at least. Unfortunately, the public did not benefit in the rice tariff reduction. Someone, Mr. Speaker, is benefiting from lower rice tariff, but definitely not the public. Clearly, relying solely on the private sector importation may not fully address the needs of our people. Mr. Speaker, the amendment I propose would allow government importation of rice to compete with existing private imports like the National Food Authority before. Only this time, the government imported rice will be distributed through licensed Kadiwa outlets nationwide. Kadiwa outlets, Mr. Speaker, known for selling affordable produce directly to consumers, are an ideal mechanism for delivering lower-cost rice to the public. This approach would enhance food security and ensure that we have a reliable, affordable source of rice. By empowering, Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, the Department of Agriculture to import rice, we can create a balanced market where prices reflect the needs of consumers and limit undue price increases. Additionally, it will provide the government with a stronger hand to stabilize prices, competing with the private sector while ensuring that ordinary citizens, the ones in the Marias of our countries, are not left vulnerable to market fluctuations, hoarding and profiteering by some. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I urge my esteemed colleagues to consider this amendment, which aims to bring relief to the people we serve and support their access to affordable staple food every day. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Speaker. Maraming salamat po, colleagues. Good afternoon.
Maraming salamat, Congressperson Erwin Tulfo of ACC-CIS. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Erwin Tulfo to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action.
There is a motion to refer the speech of Congressperson Tulfo. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. Said privileged speech is thereby referred. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Maria Teresa Colliantes of the 3rd District of Batangas to avail of the privilege hour.
The 3rd District of Batangas. Congressperson Maria Teresa V. Colliantes, you are hereby recognized. Please proceed, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a matter of collective and personal privilege. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this representation humbly stands before you, the House of the People, with a hopeful heart to speak on behalf of the entire 3rd District of Batangas. The 3rd District of Batangas is composed of 10 municipalities and 2 cities, embracing the Taal Lake, including Taal Volcano Island itself. These 10 municipalities are Balete, Talisay, Laurel, Agoncillo, San Nicolas, Santa Teresita, Alitagtag, Cuenca, Malvar, and Mataas na Kahoy, while the 2 other cities are Santo Tomas and Tanawan. 4 years ago, dear colleagues, I stood here to implore your help for my constituents when the Taal volcano suddenly woke up from centuries of deep slumber, bringing devastation and hardship not only to the 3rd District of Batangas, but also especially in the municipalities of Agoncillo, Balete, Laurel, and Talisay. The typhoon washed away entire homes. I'm sorry. But also to other localities around. Since that fateful day, Batangueños have slowly rebuilt their lives, having found courage amidst the chaos, having kept alive a flame of hope from the outpouring of support given by the entire Philippine nation, and having to learn how to live with the constant disruptions caused by the almost regular eruption of the Taal volcano. Today, I stand here once again to plead for them. It is unfortunate that last October 24, the Batangueño resilience was once again challenged. This time by Tropical Cyclone Trami. As it stepped into the Philippine area of responsibility, it presented itself as severe typhoon storm Christine, with maximum sustained winds of 95 kilometers per hour and bringing heavy and continuous rainfall with a volume of 528.5 milliliters. Rainfall volume higher than that of Typhoon Ondoy and Typhoon Yolanda, ravaging the homes of approximately 7.1 million Filipinos, submerging cities and municipalities in a deluge of mud and gushing flood water, wrecking roads, collapsing bridges, destroying infrastructure, displacing families, and claiming hundreds of lives in its wake. As this tropical storm ceaselessly poured torrential rains over our home province, not only did it flood the 3rd District, it also eroded our topography. Landslides, muds, boulders of rocks, logs of trees took over towns near Taal Lake, most especially in the municipalities of Agoncillo, Balete, Laurel, and Talisay. The typhoon washed away entire homes and buried in mud remnants of structures, even bodies of loved ones. To this day, a few still remain missing, their families left in shock and despair. While the onslaught of heavy rains and landslide continued throughout our district, this did not hinder the local government units and our people from responding quickly. Together with DPWH, DSWD, OCD, DepEd, DOH, PNP, the Philippine Coast Guard, the Bureau of Fire Protection, and those from the city and municipal disaster risk reduction and management offices braved the storm, mud, and flood to help open blocked roads and rescue our stranded kababayans. Barangay officials and community members led them to those in need of urgent aid. Each one showing exemplary compassion, strength, and bravery, rescuing not only residents, but also animals and pets along the way. When flood waters reached above the waist, rescuers and residents helped pull out stranded individuals from their homes, doing their best to ensure that every family member is accounted for. We can only imagine the relief of those families who found safety during the storm. However, not everyone was fortunate. Kung hindi nyo nakita o narinig ang balita sa kalagayan ng mga kababayan nating malubhang naapektuhan sa aming distrito, pagbigyan ninyo akong ihatid sa inyo ang pangyayari sa buhay ng isa naming kababayan. Si Reynaldo De Hocos ay isang ama ng taga-barangay Sampaloc, Talisay, Batangas, na malaot lamang para pakainin ang alagang isda, at nang siya'y bumalik sa kanilang tahanan, dagat na ng baha at putik ang kanyang natanaw. Nang humupa ang bagyo, hinanap niya ang kanyang pamilya. Natagpuan nila ito, ang kanyang may bahay at ang kanilang 5 anak, magkakasama, magkakayakap. Ang bunsong anak niya, isang sanggol, pinapainom pa ng gatas ng kanyang asawa mula sa kanyang dibdib. Natabunan ng lupa at wala ng buhay. Isa lamang ang kwento ni Reynaldo sa marami pa naming kababayang nawalan ng buhay. Kaya lubos ako humihingi ng suporta mula sa inyo. Sana'y matulungan ninyo ang ating mga nangangailangang kababayan sa 3 distrito ng Batangas. Madilim man ang pinagdaanan nila, mayroon pa ring liwanag sa lagusan. Nais kong pasalamatan ang lahat na taus-pusong tumulong at hanggang ngayon ay nagbibigay ng tulong para sa mga naapektuhan ng Bagyong Christine sa aming distrito. To all the government agencies who extended their help, to the religious and civic communities who welcomed our evacuees, who gave them food and a warm place to stay, and to the numerous good-hearted people who wished to remain anonymous, your help and support are greatly appreciated. Maraming salamat po. I also would like to thank all those who donated relief goods, construction materials, organized mobile kitchens, donated cash, hygiene items, medical kits, and most importantly, those who gave their precious time and effort to help us out. Maraming salamat po. Kay Speaker Martin Romualdez, na agarang nagpadala ng tulong para sa aking mga kababayan. Maraming salamat po. At sa ating mahal na Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Romualdez Marcos Jr., sa inyong presensya at mismong pagdalaw at pagtulong sa aming mga kababayan, hindi po namin makakalimutan ang inyong suporta sa amin. Maraming salamat po. Ang ating mga nagawa noong Bagyong Christine at sa paghupa nito ay nagpapatunay na buhay pa rin ang diwa ng bayanihan sa mukha ng gulo. Tayo ay isang pamilyang Pilipino, buo at nagkakaisa sa anumang pagkakataon. The damage to several of our LGUs in the 3rd District of Batangas is colossal. Once again, I appeal to my good colleagues in this House to help our province, especially those affected in the 3rd District. The damage alone exceeds 30 billion pesos. We are already doing our best to realign the budget for our district to meet the needs of our people. But we need your help. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, let us be like an everlasting star in the darkness. Let us be a steady source of strength and support for our fellow Filipinos. Please help us rise as we cannot do this alone. Isang sambayang Pilipino, buo at nagkakaisa para sa isang bagong Pilipinas. Puno ng pag-asa, puno ng pagmamahal sa kapwa. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, to the honorable members of the 19th Congress, this is a Congress for the Filipino people. Let us unite to rebuild what Typhoon Christine has done to our district. Mabuhay ang ikatlong distrito ng Batangas, mabuhay ang ika-19 na Kongreso, at mabuhay ang bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Colliantes to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate act.
There is a motion. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the representative of Gabriela Party List, Representative Arlene Brosas, for her privileged speech.
The Honorable Arlene Brosas is recognized for her privileged speech.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, distinguished colleagues. Good afternoon. Ang kalayaan sa pamamahayag ay hindi lamang isang karapatan, kundi isa ring haligi ng ating demokrasya. Ito ang nagbibigay boses sa mga walang tinig, nagsisilbing bantay laban sa pang-aabuso ng kapangyarihan, at nagpapanatili ng malusog na diskurso sa ating lipunan. Ngunit ang kalayaang ito ay kasalukuyang nanganganib dahil sa panunupil. Ang kaso ni Frenchie May Cumpio, isang community journalist sa Tacloban City, ay isang malinaw na halimbawa nito. Noong Pebrero 7, year 2020, sa isang coordinated pre-dawn raid ng Philippine National Police, si Frenchie May at 4 pang aktivista na tinaguriang Tacloban 5 ay iligal na inaresto. Pinaratangan sila ng gawa-gawang kaso ng illegal possession of firearms at explosives. Bago ang pag-aresto, si Frenchie May ay nakaranas na ng matinding surveillance, red tagging, at iba pang forma ng panggigipit. Frenchie May remains detained at the Tacloban City Jail with lay worker Mariel Domiquil and human rights worker Alexander Abinguna. Various other laws have been weaponized in an apparent attempt to keep Cumpio and her co-accused in prison. In 2022, the Anti-Money Laundering Council charged Cumpio and Domiquil with a non-bailable terrorist financing case under Republic Act number 10168. This is in connection with the money supposedly found during their arrest in February 2020. These cases sit atop the illegal possession of firearms and explosives charges that are proceeding at a slow pace due in no small part to the delaying tactics of the prosecution. Before her arrest, Frenchie May was the executive director of the online news outfit, Eastern Vista. and radio anchor of the program Linganay Han Kamatuoran or Bells of Truth, aired over DYVL 819 kHz Action Radio Tacloban. She was also an active regional correspondent for the media organization Alter Media Network. As a community journalist and radio anchor, Frenchie May critically covered the stories and plight of the grassroots in Eastern Visayas. But with her arrest, reportage of such stories has become minimal, while the operations of Eastern Vista and Linganay became erratic. The cost of Frenchie May's imprisonment to the right to information of communities in Samar and Leyte is immeasurable. Madam Speaker, distinguished colleagues, it's not only Frenchie who is being deprived of liberty. Her arrest meant depriving the public, more so the people of Eastern Visayas, of meaningful reporting of important issues such as human rights abuses and militarization. Issues whose reportage made Frenchie a target of state forces in the first place. Her absence has left a void in the community's access to critical information, a void that we fear is now being filled with disinformation that cripples the people's participation in governance and society. Friends, batchmates, media institutions, and people's organizations have long campaigned for the release of the Tacloban Five. They have gone through various government institutions, including the Commission on Human Rights and the Office of the Ombudsman, to help speed up the case, but sadly, to no avail. The Committee to Protect Journalists, or CPJ, a highly acclaimed world organization that monitors attacks against the media worldwide, has also repeatedly called the Philippine government to act. In fact, just a few days after President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. clinched the presidency in May 2022, CPJ sent a letter to the President. However, there was no news on whether Malacanang officially responded to this letter. Years passed, yet we remain adamant in our call to free Frenchie May, who, according to the 2023 Global Prison Census of the CPJ, is the only journalist remaining in prison in the Philippines. A detail that severely tarnishes the country's commitment to press freedom. I repeat, Frenchie May is currently the only journalist remaining in prison in the Philippines. In January this year, the government welcomed to the country the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression, Ms. Irene Can. The Special Rapporteur braved the circuitous Philippine bureaucracy to visit Frenchie May, Mariel, and Alexander at the Tacloban City Jail. In her exit statement, Ms. Can highlighted the chilling effect on democracy when truth seekers are imprisoned. She underscored the urgency to reassess our nation's treatment of journalists and reconcile our public commitments with the harsh realities. This February, media advocacy groups penned an urgent appeal to the Department of Justice to underscore this fact. They urged a case re-evaluation and immediate release of Frenchie May and her colleagues. In July this year, I visited Frenchie May Cumpio, Mariel Domiquil, and Alexander Abinguna, where I talked to them and they shared to me their situation. Nakakalungkot, Madam Speaker, na ang mga kabataang ito na pinili lamang tulungan ang kanilang kapwa ay nakapiit sa kulungan dahil lamang sa mga gawa-gawang kaso. Despite these developments and the sustained and even growing global call to free Frenchie May, she remains imprisoned without resolution. Her life and career paused by a justice system that seems indifferent to the speed and quality of its response. The phrase, "justice delayed is justice denied," aptly describes her situation and serves as a somber reminder to the urgent work that we, as lawmakers and representatives of the people, need to do. Ngayong araw, naganap ang paglilitis kaninang umaga kay Frenchie May Cumpio at Mariel Damikil. Humarap si Frenchie May sa Regional Court sa Tacloban City. Samantalang si Alexander Philip Abiguna, isa pang miyembro ng Tacloban 5, ay hindi pa nakakatanggap ng schedule ng paglilitis. Ang mahigit 4 na taon ng pagkapiit ni Frenchie May nang walang hatol ay sumasalamin sa problema ng pinatagal at hindi makatarungang detensyon. Isang problema na matagal nang kinakaharap ng ating justice system. Madam Speaker, mga kapwa ko mambabatas, hinihikayat natin ang lahat na isulong ang agarang pagpapabasura sa kaso ng Tacloban 5. Hindi kriminal ang mga taong ito. Sila ay tagapagtanggol ng karapatang pantao na naging biktima ng panunupil ng Estado. Ang tanging krimen nila ay ang kanilang katapatan sa pagbibigay liwanag sa katotohanan at pagtatanggol sa karapatan ng mga mahihirap. Kailangan nating kilalanin ang kanilang papel sa pagpapatupad ng katarungan at pangangalaga sa kalayaang magpahayag, sa halip na hayaan ng batas na masamantala laban sa kanila. Nananawagan ng Gabriela Women's Party na palayain si Frenchie May Cumpio, Mariel Damikil at Alexander Philip Abinguna. Gayon din ang iba pang mga bilanggong politikal sa bansa. Maraming salamat, Madam Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the speech of the Honorable Arlene Brosas be referred to the Committee of Rules for its appropriate action.
There's a motion. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the representative of Bataan Party List, Representative Raul Manuel, for his privileged speech.
The Honorable Raul Manuel is recognized for his privileged speech.
Salamat, Madam Speaker. Ngayong taon po, ipinagdiriwang natin ang 35th anniversary ng Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development o PLCPD. Pati na rin ang 30th anniversary ng International Conference on Population and Development o ICPD na ginanap noong taong 1994. Pagbati po sa mga mambabatas na kapwa miyembro ng PLCPD at pagpupugay sa masisipag na sekretariat ng PLCPD para sa kanilang dekadang pagsisikap sa larangan ng legislative advocacy work. Dahil sa sama-samang pagsisikap ng mga tagapagtanggol ng karapatan at kapakanan ng kapwa Pilipino, na itulak ang pagsasabatas ng mahahalagang panukala gaya ng Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law, Prohibition of Child Marriage Law, Anti-Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation and Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Materials Law, pati ang Law Increasing the Age to Determine Statutory Rape. Bilang bahagi ng paggunita ng 30th anniversary ng 1994 ICPD, at ng makasaysayang program of action nito, kinakailangan nating balikan ang mga programa, polisiya at batas ukol sa pagpapaunlad ng tao at aralin ang pagpapatupad at epekto ng mga ito sa kapwa Pilipino. Kasabay nito, kailangan din nating magkamit ng higit pang mga tagumpay upang mapabuti ang buhay ng susunod na mga kabataang Pilipino at maibukas sa kanila ang mga oportunidad upang maging mga mamamayang kumikilos para sa mas magandang lipunan. Nasa isang mahalagang panahon tayo upang pag-isipan kung ano ang maaari at dapat nating gawin sa darating na mga buwan at taon upang ipagtanggol ang mga sektor na vulnerable at protektahan ang kanilang mga karapatan kung nais nating itaguyod ang ganap na pag-unlad ng ating mga mamamayan. Hangga't nananatili ang mga sistematikong hadlang sa pagpapatupad ng mga programa para sa kabataan, bata at kababaihan, nasasagkaan ang kanilang lubos na partisipasyon sa iba't ibang larangan sa lipunan, gaya ng pagtatapos ng pag-aaral at pagpasok sa disente at nakabubuhay na trabaho. Ang mga usaping ito ay nadarama sa buong mundo. Bagamat nasa iba-ibang antas at may iba-ibang anyo, maraming pagkakahalintulad, lalo sa mga umuusbong na suliranin dahil sa pandaigdigang sistemang sumasaklaw sa ekonomiya, politika at kultura ng mga bansa sa kasalukuyang panahon. Dahil dito, Madam Speaker, nagtipon ang mga mambabatas sa Oslo, Norway noong Abril ng taong ito para sa ika-8 International Parliamentarians Conference hinggil sa pagpapatupad ng 1994 Program of Action. Tinalakay doon ang kasalukuyang mga banta sa mga karapatan ng marginalized sectors tulad ng kababaihan, kabataan, adolescents, and queers. Karangalan para sa representasyon na ito na maging bahagi ng 14 na mambabatas sa komite na bumuo ng Oslo Statement of Commitment na inaprubahan ng komperensya via consensus. Ang representasyong ito ay magsusumite ng kopya nitong Oslo Statement of Commitment bilang kalakip sa talumpating ito. Kabilang sa mga nilalaman ng Oslo Statement ang pagpapabilis ng mga hakbang para mapalawak ang comprehensive sexuality education na siyentipiko, angkop sa edad at nakabatay sa kontekstong pangkultura. Sa ating bansa, meron tayong Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Bill na naipasa na sa ikatlo at huling pagbasa sa ating kapulungan. Umaasa tayo na mabibigyang pansin din ng ating mga kapwa mambabata sa Senado ang panukalang ito bago matapos ang ating termino sa 19th Congress. Pinagtibay ng Oslo Statement of Commitment ang pagkilala sa mga internasyonal na batas ukol sa karapatang pantao at sa international humanitarian law, lalo na't hindi na maitatanggi ang matinding pagdurusa ng mga kababaihan, mga bata at iba pang vulnerableng sektor dulot ng mga banyagang interbensyon at okupasyon. Bukod pa rito, itinaguyod ng Oslo Statement ang ligtas at makabuluhang partisipasyon ng mga kababaihan sa digital spaces at sa pagpapalakas ng mga batas upang maiwasan ang paggamit ng bagong teknolohiya para sa sexual and gender-based violence at iba pang krimen. Nagpasya rin ang mga mambabatas sa Oslo na tugunan ang mga mapanganib na social and gender norms na naglilimita sa potensyal ng kababaihan, kabataan, queers, at iba pang marginalized sectors. One way to do this is by strengthening the engagement of men and boys and mobilizing community actors, faith-based organizations, and traditional and religious leaders. Finally, the Oslo Statement of Commitment continues to set high standards in terms of financing through national budgets. It calls on countries to mobilize domestic resources by developing fair and effective tax systems and aims for the recrafting of financial architecture towards supporting programs, activities, and policies that promote human rights and gender equality. Iyan ay ilan pa lamang, Madam Speaker, sa mga pwede at dapat nating gawin. Let's all work towards the fulfillment of state obligations, genuine empowerment of sectors, practice of informed choices, and defense of people's rights. To close, I would like to greet once again the PLCPD family. Happy 35th anniversary. Maraming salamat, Madam Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Raul Manuel to the Committee of Rules for its appropriate actions.
There's a motion. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize Representative Loreto Acharon of the Lone District of General Santos for his privileged speech.
The Honorable Loreto Acharon is recognized for his privileged speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, guests, ladies and gentlemen, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Tropical Cyclone Marce, number 13 in the Pag-asa list of weather disturbances for 2024, is now outside our area of responsibility and headed to mainland Asia at the heels of Typhoon Christine and Leon, all three of which left untold miseries, destruction, and heavy casualties. Based on records and experience of the State Weather Bureau, an average of 20 typhoons per year is projected to come visiting, and if by any chance their estimates become accurate, we should be prepared for 7 more, God forbid. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, empirical data going back 20 to 30 years undeniably proves the ongoing climate change in the average conditions of temperature and rainfall in the Philippines. Climate change is a threat to continuing development because extreme weather events get in the way of economic momentum, damage infrastructure, and deeply affect everyday lives, routines, and the regular functioning of government and institutions. A situation, if left unchecked, can become critical for all. To belabor this point, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, for the first quarter of 2024, our economic growth rate measured by the gross domestic product stood at 5.8%, higher than the 5.5% of the last quarter of 2023. By the second quarter, our economy accelerated at a rate of 6.3%, brought about by growth in investments and government spending, exceeding the projections of some of our country's renowned economists. Last week, however, in a press statement issued by Secretary Balisacan of the NEDA, the latest GDP numbers showed that for the third quarter, the economy contracted to 5.2% overall, 5.2%. Even if the industry and service sectors grew by 5% and 6% respectively, our agriculture, forestry, and fishing sectors were seriously impacted by climate-related disruptions such as the El Niño phenomenon, habagat or southwest monsoon, and 7 typhoons, a scenario made worse by the recent oil spill in Bataan and equally so by recent outbreaks of African swine fever in some provinces that caused a decrease in livestock production. Our economic managers, nevertheless, are confident that we are still on track to achieve government's target of at least a GDP of 6.5% by year-end, as we anticipate increases in holiday spending, more stable commodity prices, lower interest rates, strong labor market, and the rapid resurgence of economic activities in typhoon-affected areas. These assurances are most welcome and appreciated, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues. However, complacency must not be allowed to rear its ugly head, and in its place, we must take heed of the following climate change projections for the Philippines. And these are: 1, temperatures will continue to rise, which means that the number of days with a heat index above 35 degrees centigrade, extremely hot days in short, will increase dramatically. Average precipitation will become more variable. That's the second one, which means that drier days will become even more drier and longer, and with lower rainfall due to frequent El Niño events, while the wet season will be extremely wet due to increasingly and intense rain events. Extreme weather disturbance will be stronger and more frequent. That is the third, which means that the number of days with more intense rainfall will increase. Number 4, climate change will affect different parts of our country differently, which means that annual rainfall in the next 25 years is projected to decline in northern Luzon, central and western Mindanao, and in contrast increase in central Luzon, eastern Visayas, and western Mindanao. Government has already undertaken a broad range of responses and aligned national consciousness on the need to adapt these changes as we make every effort to mitigate the effects of such changes by instituting climate-resilient reforms in priority sectors, namely water, agriculture, energy, urban, and transport. In water, for instance, because we need to improve water storage capacity to manage urban demand, attend to water supply shortages, improve sanitation, strengthen wastewater utilities, effective floodwater management, the efficient use of irrigation, and a host of other concerns with this August chamber, which this August chamber already addressed through approval on third and final reading of House Bill number 9663 or the Natural Water Resources Act, in the hope to meet water security and improvement on environmental resilience. In agriculture, because of its critical importance to food security, employment, and poverty reduction, requiring adoption of improved practices, diversification, expansion of irrigation to rain-fed areas, and development of fishery management responsive to changes in the migration patterns and reproduction rates. In energy, because this sector is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the Philippines, and although the country's power generation assets are generally owned and operated by private corporations, we must transition towards a renewable energy-dominated power system to enhance power security and affordability. Scaling up investments in renewable energy with the corresponding grid capacity and flexibility entails huge capital initiatives to support acquisition of considerable international know-how. Thus, the removal of 40% ownership limits to international private investment in solar and wind power is critical to bridge the existing finance gaps. In urban areas such as cities, these areas are the country's engines of economic growth, accounting for almost 80% of our GDP, and climate change severely threatens urban infrastructure, economic activity, public service delivery, and human health. In transport, because the emissions of greenhouse gases and local air pollutants can be reduced by the scaling up of the electrification of public transport and acceleration of mass transit development in Metro Manila and other key cities. Such transition promises sustainable environment, enriching mobility for millions. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, extreme weather events and the creeping changes in temperature and rainfall patterns will surely lower growth and affect the well-being of our people. Without doubt, climate change threatens development in the Philippines. However, there are many options available to reduce risks. Many climate actions do not even require investments, such as, for example, ensuring that new construction is not done on areas at risk of flooding, as exemplified by tools like DOST's Project NOAA, offering real-time hazard mapping and flood alerts. Climate mitigation benefits arise when climate actions are treated as development actions, like in the transport sector actions, for example. They are justified based solely on benefits derived from reduced air pollution and savings in travel time. Allowing investments in renewable energy by reforming institutional restrictions may equally be justified solely based on lower capital costs, allowing rationalization of electricity prices, which at present are much higher than our regional neighbors. Many climate actions do not require changes in legislation, but needs improvement of current programs or implementing rules and regulations. But on the other hand, there are actions that would indeed require legislation, such as the creation of the Department of Water Resources and revisitation or the revisit of the Free Irrigation Security Act to improve water efficiency. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, the solution to any problem is to accept the fact that there is a problem. Future losses from climate change can be greatly reduced by addressing our weakness, which includes ensuring that new buildings are energy efficient and climate resilient, and urban growth ultimately geared and designed in transit-friendly ways. Climate action in our country will primarily have to be carried out by the private sector, commercial firms, and individual households. There's the need to make sure that the incentives are right from the very start. Our experience with Republic Act number 9136 or the IPIRA law shows that private sector reacts strongly when given the right incentives. However, the challenge of channeling private sector enthusiasm in the right direction remains, given that much of the new capacity built was coal-fired. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, the required and appropriate response to the challenges posed by climate change to our country's ability to meet our development goals is within our capacity building on previous efforts, scaling projects and improving implementation, and inaction will result to reduction of growth and increased hardship for many of our people. The costs are relatively modest, all the more reason for us to act now. Madam Speaker, thank you at mabuhay po tayong lahat. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the speech of the representative of General Santos, Representative Loretta Chacharon, to his speech to the Committee of Rules for its appropriate actions.
There's a motion. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we terminate the privilege hour.
There's a motion to terminate the privilege hour. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, before we continue, I move that we acknowledge the guest of Honorable Ambrosio Boy Cruz of the 5th District of Bulacan. And she is Miss Olivia Limpeao, the President of the Distilled Spirits Association of the Philippines.
To the guests of Honorable Ambrosio Boy Cruz of the 5th District of Bulacan, Miss Olivia Limpeao, President of Distilled Spirits Association of the Philippines, welcome to the House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, under the calendar of business for the day, I move that we consider House Bill 10535 as contained in Committee Report number 1112, submitted by the Committee on Ways and Means.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of House Bill 10535.
House Bill number 10535, an act amending sections 134 and 168 of Republic Act number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Representative Ambrosio Cruz Jr. of the 5th District of Bulacan be recognized to sponsor the measure.
The Honorable Ambrosio C. Cruz Jr. from the 5th District of Bulacan is recognized for his sponsorship.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, dear colleagues, guests, good afternoon. This morning, we trooped to Malacanang for the signing of the Create More Law. We are proud in the Committee on Ways and Means to legislate this solution that will bring in a lot of investment for us. This afternoon, it is my honor to sponsor another bill that will bring about industry growth. House Bill number 11535, as contained in the Committee Report number 1112, or an act amending Section 134 and 168 of the Republic Act number 8424, or otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended. This measure seeks to rectify the taxation policy on denatured alcohol, which limits denaturing to domestic alcohol produced by local distilleries, an outdated practice given our globalizing world and help our other emerging chemical industries. In the current practice, once denatured, alcohol becomes an undrinkable substance and shall no longer be taxed as potable alcohol under Section 141 of the National Internal Revenue Code. However, Section 134 and 168 of the Tax Code limit the denaturing of alcohol only to domestic alcohol produced by local distilleries and only in the premises of such local distilleries. But we do not have enough domestic alcohol supply, even just for our liquor companies, given the largest gin and brandy makers being Filipino companies here in our country. Therefore, Your Honor, my colleagues, it is high time to align our policies with industry practice. We should expand the coverage of denatured alcohol to any domestic or foreign source intended as ingredient in the manufacture of distilled spirit. A simple solution that would catalyze industry advancement. Finally, we must pass this legislation to optimize the gains from the chemical industries, the other downstream producer that utilize denatured alcohol, pharmaceutical, and cosmetic. Definitely, this will benefit from this minor correction. We ask our colleagues to support this measure, which is consistent with the cycle of global trade, and allow our alcohol and chemical industries to grow. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of interpellation.
There's a motion to open the period of interpellation. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no member who wishes to interpellate, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate.
There's a motion to close the period of sponsorship and debate. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
There's a motion to open the period of amendments. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no committee amendment, we now proceed to individual amendment. I move that we proceed to individual amendment.
There's a motion to open the period of individual amendments. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, there being no member who wishes to introduce individual amendment, I move that we close the period of amendments.
There's a motion to close the period of amendments. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we vote and approve on second reading House Bill 10535.
Those who are in favor of House Bill 10535 say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 10535 is approved on second reading. Congratulations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, my dear colleague.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, under the calendar of business for the day, I move that we consider House Bill number 10914 as contained in Committee Report number 1210, submitted by the Committee on Overseas Workers' Affairs. And copies of this bill have been distributed to the members, and that I request, therefore, that the Secretary General be instructed to read the title of the bill.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 10914, an act providing for a free financial education to overseas Filipino workers and their families.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of sponsorship and debate for this bill, and that the chairperson of the Committee on
Overseas Workers Affairs, the Honorable Jude Asidre of Tingog Party List, be recognized to begin sponsorship of the measure.
There's a motion to open the period of sponsorship and debate. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved, and the Honorable Jude Asidre is recognized for his sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. House Bill 10914 under Committee Report 1210 seeks to provide for a free financial education for OFWs and their family. This measure is a timely and much-needed piece of legislation that will benefit and protect our migrant workers from investment scams, avoid being victims thereof, and provide them with the proper knowledge to save their money through appropriate education and training in financial literacy. The bill requires all OFWs to undergo mandatory and continuously updated financial education or literacy training seminars, which shall become an integral part of the pre-departure orientation seminar of departing OFWs and post-arrival training seminars at their countries of destination. The Department of Migrant Workers shall be the lead implementing agency in coordination with the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, the Department of Finance, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the Department of Interior and Local Government, and PDOS and PATS of providers across the country and abroad, including the Philippine embassies and consulates in the receiving countries. The subjects of this literacy training shall include consumer protection, protection on mortgaged or collateralized properties, avoidance of exorbitant interest on loans and debts, and credit information on micro and small-scale enterprises to prospective lenders, among others. For the benefit of our millions of OFWs and their families, may I urge the members of the august body to approve House Bill 10914 on second reading. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of interpellation.
There's a motion to open the period of interpellation. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no member who wishes to interpellate, I move that we close the period of interpellation.
There's a motion to close the period of interpellation. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
There's a motion to open the period of amendments. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no committee or individual amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments.
There's a motion to close the period of amendments. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we vote on second reading House Bill number 10914.
There's a motion to approve House Bill 10914. Those who are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 10914 is approved on second reading. Congratulations. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that under the calendar of business for the day, I move that we consider House Bill number 10959 as contained in Committee Report 1231 submitted by the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 10959, an act providing for the protection of the remittances of overseas Filipino workers.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of sponsorship and debate.
There's a motion to open the period of sponsorship and debate. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the chairperson of the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs, the Honorable Jude Asidre of Tingog Party List.
The Honorable Jude Asidre is recognized for his sponsorship.
Madam Speaker, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. House Bill 10959 under Committee Report 1231, in essence, seeks to extend additional protection to overseas Filipino workers by granting them 50% discount on fees or charges imposed on remittances to their families in the Philippines. As an incentive to banks and non-bank financial intermediaries who are into remittance business and provides the discount, they may claim the discounts granted as tax deduction based on the cost of services rendered to OFWs to be treated as ordinary and necessary expense deductible from their gross income. The bill also prohibits these financial intermediaries from raising their current remittance fees without prior consultation with the Department of Finance, Bangko Sentral ng Filipinas, and the Department of Migrant Workers. The proposed measure, which is principally authored by Senior Deputy Speaker Aurelio Dong Gonzales, is actually a refiled bill and has been approved by the Committee on Overseas Worker Affairs in the previous 18th Congress. The bill's provision on tax deduction has also been approved by the Committee on Ways and Means. May I therefore ask the members of this esteemed body to approve this bill on second reading. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of interpellation.
There's a motion to open the period of interpellation. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no member who wishes to interpellate, I move that we close the period of interpellation.
There's a motion to close the period of interpellation. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendment.
There's a motion to open the period of amendment. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no individual or committee amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments.
There's a motion to close the period of amendment. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we vote on second reading House Bill number 10959.
There's a motion to approve House Bill 10959. Those who are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 10959 is approved on second reading. Congratulations.
Very much.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, under the calendar of business for the day, I move that we consider House Concurrent Resolution number 38, and for that purpose, direct the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 38, Concurrent Resolution authorizing the correction of Section 1 in the enrolled copy of House Bill number 8259 entitled An Act Creating Additional Branches of the Regional Trial Court and Metropolitan Trial Court in the National Capital Judicial Region to be stationed in the city of San Juan, converting 4 branches of the Regional Trial Court in Pasig City into 4 branches of the Regional Trial Court in the city of San Juan and appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose Section 14E and 27 of Batas Pambansa Bilang 29, otherwise known as the Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980 as amended.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 38.
There's a motion to adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 38. Those who are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Concurrent Resolution number 38 is thereby adopted. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend session until 3:00 p.m. tomorrow, November 12, 2024.
Session suspended until 3 p.m. tomorrow, November
12.
2024.